Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the situation in Afghanistan. Now, I noticed a couple of pieces in the media about how Afghani women are being oppressed and so on. And so I did a search on it, and all the stories that the first 2 pages of search. So I've got it set to 15 on a page, I think. So 30 stories from the usual suspects, The Guardian, all that sort of thing, but all complaining about the outrageous, what they claim to be the outrageous treatment of women. Now, there are a few videos as well, so I had a look at a couple of those. It's a very, very one-sided take on things, no nuance, no other factors. Taliban government in Afghanistan, bad, run by men, bad, straight men, bad, and everyone else, the victim and so on. Then they bring on United Nations and that silly, simple idiot, what's it, Blinken or something, is supposed to be the Secretary of State for the United States. I mean, seriously, that guy is like an assistant manager at some 3-star hotel. And then they bring on other guests like lesbians, from the hardcore gender studies lesbians from the United Nations and so on. So everybody brought on is an expert and who's saying how terrible it is. Now, what's the issues here? Let's sort of get into it now. What's happened is this, that during the American occupation, they tried very hard to put LGBTQ, transgender, radical feminist issues. They wanted to have a gender studies. Before they even got running water and electricity going, the Americans, or the globalists, using the Americans, were putting in gender studies courses at university and teaching radical feminism at high school and so on. So now Afghanistan's a poor country, but when the Americans left, the interest in Western social division, as pushed by the globalists these days, the interest in that, assuming there was any interest, evaporated straight away. So as soon as American money stopped coming in, or globalist funds, UN funds, that sort of stuff, all that, those gender studies and turning the genders against one another, that's all disappeared, and the people were happy to embrace Islam again. Now, this didn't mean that the agitators and the stirrers and the United Nations or the lesbians wanted it. Obviously not. But if they were even 0.5% of the population, I'd be very surprised. There were those who were happy to take Western money as long as it's being thrown around and pretend to be advocates for feminist issues. But when the money was gone, not interested. So, but at least the sort of the concepts and the ideas had been left behind by the Americans. So what the globalists did was they through the United Nations and through the NGO network, which is there to push and promulgate the globalist project. All these NGOs, they're not fucking NGOs or charities, they're globalist project implementers. So these NGOs, again, Afghanistan's a poor country. They said, well, we'll bring food in and we'll give you food and we'll give you medicine and we'll give you all sorts of things. So the Taliban government go, oh, okay, no, that's fair enough. I mean, you've ruined our country with warfare, and so if you want to give us some things like medicines and also the West said, well, we'll set up schools for you. So we'll build the schools and we'll put the desks in there. We'll set everything up for you. And so the Taliban said, well, if you're giving stuff away for free, why not? But the Taliban did warn them, said, look, you can't use this to push Western values. You can't set up these schools and say they're for women to learn to read and write, but actually you teach them radical feminism, or you teach them Marxism, or you do gender studies, or you've got undercover gay lesbian issues being pushed. You can't do that. If you want just to do education, straight reading and writing, okay, we're fine with that, but don't use it for other stuff. Now, of course, the deceitful, duplicitous globalists. Islam is a threat to globalization, or a threat, an obstacle, probably more than a threat, maybe a threat as well, but it's an obstacle. And then the more hardcore the Islamic state, whether it be Iran or Afghanistan, the more of a threat or an obstacle it is to globalization. So from that perspective, they want to destroy it. And the globalists perceive that if they can infuse the Islamic, the hardcore Islamic states if they can infuse it with gay, lesbian issues and women's rights, that'll cause the disintegration of Islam in the same way that it caused the disintegration of the Christian West when the globalists pushed that on the white Western nations. You go up to the average white person in the street and say, racist Nazi, and they'll go, oh, no, not me, it's not me, I didn't. But if you try that on an Islamic fundamentalist, they'll laugh at your face, maybe even shoot you or stab you or something like that. So they think that what worked in the West in subjugating the law-abiding Christian straight white males and so on, what worked in the West is destabilizing Western society will also work in destabilizing Islamic fundamentalism. I don't think it will. I don't think they've got a snowball's chance there. The fusion between the Islamic religion and the way of life is just too close, whereas in the Christian religion or in the West generally, there'd been a separation of the two, and it was the gap between the two that the globalists could successfully exploit to erode and undermine Western social cohesion. But they're trying the same playbook in the Islamic states, Afghanistan in this case, and I don't think it's going to work. So they have to resort to even more deceit than they used in the West, which is saying something. So what the globalists were doing is they were pushing the gay, lesbian issues. Now, the Taliban government warned them a number of times, look, you keep on doing this, we'll shut you down. We'll shut down the women's school or the girls' schools. If you want to do it for reading, writing, and think, fine. But if you're going to push these radical feminist issues, we'll shut you down. So you need to stop. But the United Nations, the globalists, the NGOs, they just kept on going. And so the Taliban, true to their words, said, look, we're going to shut you down then. We're not going to have universities teaching gender studies and radical lesbian feminism. We're just not going to have that in our society. If you want to have it for the West, fine, that's it. But we're not going to have it here. So if that's the condition of accepting your money, that we have to teach our young women lesbian studies, then we're going to say no. We'll just shut the schools or the universities or the colleges down. So they did. Now, the other area that the NGOs were operating in is where they were effectively employing only women. They'd employ men for some things, but really they were artificially employing large numbers of Afghani women. And again, the purpose wasn't to give them employment or to help them learn to sew up torn clothes or how to distill water so you can get clean water from dirty water. It wasn't to do any of that. It was to teach, again, push this radical faith. You don't have to wear a burqa. You don't have to wear a veil. Our Western values are this. Now, whether I agree or disagree with how the Afghani government or an Islamic fundamentalist government wants to operate, that's by the by. It's not my business to tell them what to do in their country with their people. It's just not my business, and it's not any white person's business or anyone else's business. It's their business. We wouldn't want the Taliban coming to Australia or the United States and demanding that everybody put on a burqa or something. We wouldn't want that, or we wouldn't want the fundamentalist. Everyone has to run to prayer at the facing east. None of us would want that, and so we should also be aware that they don't want us telling them what to do and saying that, hey, you got to teach lesbian studies in your society because we want it to fracture and dislocate so we, the globalists, can take over. That's not going to run there, and it's very deceitful and duplicitous and I believe treacherous as well. So So the NGOs were artificially employing large numbers of women simply to radicalize them, no other reason. Now, again, the Taliban could see the benefit of the NGOs giving free stuff, and they could see the benefit, but they did warn the NGOs and said, look, if you're going to radicalize them, if you're going to employ these women that you don't really need to, and you're employing them for the sole purpose of radicalize them and creating agents provocateurs to be in our midst, then we're going to shut that. We're going to tell you that you can't employ women. So stop teaching the radical feminism and stop radicalizing our women and everything will be fine. But no. The globalist NGOs just kept right on going, right, didn't miss a beat, just kept on going, and themselves became quite deceitful in trying to cover it up. So the Taliban shut them down. Now, to me, the Taliban government has acted responsibly. They have the right to govern Afghanistan. I may not like what they do. I may not agree with it. But that doesn't change the fact they have the right to govern it as they see fit. Again, whether you agree or disagree with them doesn't matter. They have that right to govern as they see fit. Now, as soon as the Taliban did this, which they'd given ample warning, and the NGOs and the people running the schools and the globalist cabal generally could have backed off, and instead of trying to force the radical feminism, the lesbian and the gay on them, they could have sort of found some middle ground and maybe accepted that getting girls to go to high school is actually quite a significant step forward. And it may take 50 years or longer before there's an obvious change in the social structures and so on, but that's better than where things are now. And so I'd accept a small victory if it was me. I'd accept a small negotiated victory rather than go for the lot and lose everything, which is what the case is. But instead of accepting that they fucked up, which they did, instead, the globalist machine kicks straight into action. United Nations, European Union, US Secretary of State, they all rushed to the microphones to denounce it. Evil Taliban, Hitler. And actually, they got a break for a few minutes from trashing Vladimir Putin. So at least they had something different to talk about. Now, some of the hyperbole coming out of these talking heads, one of the EU spokeswoman was a radical green leftist, and according to her, girls going to universities to study gender studies. I mean, the useless fucking gender studies called the girls going to university in Afghanistan to study gender studies is everything that constitutes life. Can you believe that? I mean, what a load of fucking crap. It shows you how useless our fucking Western politicians are, because they're all globalist flunkies now. Just going through the videos online, there was radical feminist commentators, and they're introduced as independent experts when they're in fact radical lesbians. And for some reason, they seem to think women's issue in Afghanistan is it's a lesbian issue in effect. I mean, I can't believe what's going on there, but the other news presenters were gay and again lisping their way through the naughtiness, naughty of the Taliban. But there was no attempt at a balanced coverage, and the balanced coverage would have been the NGOs and the globalists generally pushed and provoked and scratched at the Taliban until the Taliban responded as they said they would, and then they all run around and say, "Oh, isn't it terrible, the oppression of women?" and that women in Afghanistan are clamoring. And there's various footage of women in burqas and veils and the like, queuing, and the impression you got the queue was that it was some sort of subjugation of women, but it wasn't. They were just going through a metal detector. And if you actually found another video that showed that they were just queuing up to go through the only metal detector that was there, or as in entrance to that building. So that's all the queue was. Now, if you look at there was another queue where the women were supposed to be protesting that they weren't being allowed to go. I mean, can you imagine this? The Afghani women. This is in a tribal peasant dirt poor society, are supposedly protesting in the street that they can't go to university to study lesbian gender studies. I mean, what a load of nonsense. That was again, again, the United Nations and the globalists, they put these agitators in to stir up trouble in Afghanistan. Those women aren't there to demand that they study gender studies. They're given money and food and offered all sorts of inducements to run around and pretend they're protesting when they're doing nothing of the sort. And some of those photographs were from other countries as well. They weren't even Afghani. So again, a huge misrepresentation and a very classic globalization of misinformation, disinformation, and a misrepresentation to boot. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.